Hello and welcome to a brand new series of Car File. Now, by way of celebration and to start the new series off, we're going to be delving into Audi's toy box and looking in particular at some of their specialist vehicles. And they don't come much more specialist than the ultimate estate car of them all, the RS4.
Oh yes, nice big boot. Plenty of room in there for me wellies. I do like estate cars. Oh yeah, plenty of room in the back, looks nice and comfy. And roof rails, full length. They'll be useful for my luggage box when I go camping. Nice.
Who cares? 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 Who cares?
We want things that really matter. Massive alloys, huge low-profile tyres, full-length skirts right along the side, big flared arches, massive grills. And best of all, with over 380 brake horsepower, yes, there is room for the kids in the back, but you could call this Daddy's Revenge. When I was a kid, I had a real hankering for a little red sports car. This is better because this is a really great big red sports car. I've actually no idea what this car is for. It's immensely powerful and it's an estate. Maybe it's aimed at like reps. Maybe it's reps revenge. I remember seeing a documentary in which we were told about the pecking order on the motorway, and if a GLX driver came up behind a GL driver, then the GL driver had to give way. Well, what are you going to make of this, boys? They're going to get out of the way, that's what. The more you look at the RS4, the more fascinating the numbers become. The engine, for a start, 2.7 litre, 2 turbochargers. It's a V6 and it produces 380 brake horsepower. That gives it an amazing 141 bhp per litre. Nearly all of that 380 brake horsepower generated by a fantastic engine goes straight to the road thanks to Audi's legendary Quattro four-wheel drive system, and the result, well, it is breathtaking. There's an amazing amount of mid-range. It's something like a peaky, wimpy little turbo engine. In third gear, there's huge grunt available. But let's face it, with all of that power, there really is not room on this country's roads to explore what the car can do. Certainly not safely, and certainly not legally. But I know of somewhere where we can. And Audi obviously agree that perhaps there isn't always enough room on the road, because this beneath me, this tarmac, is not just your ordinary tarmac, it's your Grand Prix tarmac. We're at Silverstone, the Grand Prix circuit, and they've brought us here to go around it in the RS4 with instructors. So I'm not talking to you anymore, I'm driving. Before we do anything else, I'm going to be taken around the track with my instructor Clive at a nice, slow and steady pace, which is good news because it's not too uncomfortable and I get a chance to see where I've got to go. I don't want to get lost. Take it away, Clive.
Okay, right. Coming into Lovefield here, this is a corner which is very important because it goes around forever in the day. So what we're looking at is the 22 board over there. Can you see that board on the outside of the track?
Yeah.
That box. We need to look well through a corner and look beyond the corner, so don't just look at the corner when you get to it.
First up, we were taken for a gentle and very useful spin around the track by an instructor with some handy points in coping with a car with this much power on what is still a very challenging circuit. The Silverstone Grand Prix circuit is 17 corners long. It's about 3.7 miles in length, and I've forgotten every single inch of it. So I'm going to have to remember it, Clive, which means you're going to have to explain it to me. Time for my first laps, and as soon as you take off, you realise no matter how wide the track might be, with this much power on tap, you've got to be very careful to keep it on the grey bits and out of the green.
This is our slowest corner we're coming to now, so this is Vale. I want to slow it right down here now, down in gear 4. Good.
It was quite a thrill taking such a powerful car around the Grand Prix circuit. I could almost hear the screaming of the F1 cars. Mind you, none of those are estates, and it's very easy to forget that this is still an estate car. Do you know, I'm still having difficulty seeing the point of this car. Yes, it's fast, well, it's very, very fast indeed, but it's still an estate car, a £46,500 estate car that goes like a racing car. But it doesn't really matter. This is one of those cases where there doesn't need to be a point. It's just a bit of fun. Well, quite a lot of fun. There's also exclusivity, of course. If you pay that money, you'd be very unlucky if your neighbours turn out to have one as well, because there's only 400 in the country. But if all that's tempted you to buy one, you can't. They're all sold, all 400. So I'm going to play in this one while I can. I'll leave this, I think.
Throughout the programme, we're going to be chatting to David Ingram from Audi to find out how many of the specialist vehicles come about. the most obvious one being the Audi Tt, which we all remember started off life as a concept car.
Yeah, the Tt did start as a concept, but I think it's very important that we keep the balance between commercial reality and niche cars, which probably have their main focus as increasing the awareness of an organisation, improving the credibility of an organisation, and creating that sort of wow factor, you know, getting the excitement and passion into the brand. And the Tt was obviously a very, very strong thing from that point of view. Originally it was presented as a concept, but presented as a concept which, if it turned into production, would look very, very close to the original concept. And the response was overwhelming, of course, and people responded to it very well. And indeed, a lot of people put their name down for one without knowing how long it was going to be before it went into production, how much it was going to cost, and all those sorts of things. So it was clear that people were going for the look of the car. They hadn't driven it beforehand. It was the looks that said it all. So it got the thumbs up, and it's now a roaring success.
Now all that brings us neatly to another concept car that made it to the roads through public demand. Richard will be taking a closer look, but first here's David with Audi's interpretation of how the Allroad came about.
Well, it's something that's been thought about for quite some time. We all knew that we had a very good traction system with the Quattro. It's been in production now 21 years, and right from the beginning we knew that we had a system which was capable of being the basis of a very competent off-road vehicle. The limitation of the original Quattro was its ground clearance, and we developed an existing car, an existing successful car, the A6 Avant, with an adjustable air suspension system which had 4 different height settings. So that would solve the ground clearance problem. The standard Quattro system did the job very, very suitably for the traction, and hey presto, it came together as an extraordinarily competent off-road vehicle. Off-road with the suspension on its high setting, but also on-road with the low setting, because the traditional bugbear of traditional off-road vehicles are its high centre of gravity. So we could effectively have the best of both worlds.
Here's a good one, right? You'll love this. What do you get if you cross a sheep with a kangaroo? Well, probably quite an expensive lawsuit, and you certainly open up an interesting moral debate. But we do love our hybrids. It's the same with everything. We won't settle for just a food processor. It's got to double up as a letter opener and shower cap as well. And the same goes for our cars. We want that bit extra. That's why Audi invented the A6 Avant, an estate car crossed with a sports car. Now they've done it again with this, the Allroad, an estate car crossed with a sports car, crossed with an off-roader. The result? Surely a big wobbly bag of compromises. But we'll find out. Drive the petrol engine version in a bit of a hurry and you'll start to see you would dream of in an ordinary off-roader. 0 to 60 comes up in a shade under 8 seconds, a top speed 147 miles an hour, and all with that sure-footed, almost sports car handling. Start to drift off-road, we're rocking and rolling. It copes extremely well. Because we're not a huge cumbersome off-roader, it can actually skip along the smaller bumps very well indeed. Audi's interiors can hold their head up in any company. I rate them as amongst the very best in the world. So it's good news, there's no disappointment in here. It's every bit an A6 Avant. Beautiful, clean, sharp lines everywhere. And every single bit made of the best quality materials and fitted beautifully. There's no stray lines or big gaps. There's all the usual kit you'd expect to find on board. We've got sophisticated satellite navigation, electrical, everything, including my seat. But we've also got one interesting little panel here, and it's a big giveaway that this is actually a pretty serious car. It's down here. Because when Audi named it the Allroad, they did so with good reason. It's suitable for all roads, and that's not just because it has the Quattro four-wheel drive system. It also has a very clever air suspension system, which allows it to vary the ride height according to the conditions. Let me explain and demonstrate. Right now, we're at normal. About there, for ordinary day-to-day driving around town. If you go over 75 miles an hour or press the button to lower it, it automatically drops to its lower position, streamline for going really fast. If you want to go a bit off-road, you hit the button, you go up, past normal, and on to high 1. We've got a bit of extra ground clearance, we don't catch anything underneath, fine. If it gets really tough, we can hit the button again, and we go up to high 2. We're really high up, nothing can catch us, and we're safe. That's the theory. That's just me jumping up and down. Don't know how it works in the car, so we'll try it, and we'll try it on all roads. It is surprising, with this system you can get an Audi into places that you really don't expect to see an Audi, and more importantly, you can get it out again. Driving as I was the automatic is certainly not ideal for off-roading. This one doesn't have the optional low ratio gearbox either, so going downhill I had to put the brakes on, which can mean locking an occasional wheel. It does get a bit alarming, but we certainly got round unscathed. Mind you, part of me was wondering, would I really want to take an estate car that costs between £32,000 and £36,000 off-road at all, where the body could get all dinged and scratched? Mind you, if you got the money to pay for the car, you'd probably have the money to have all the blemishes taken out. So, does this most compromised of cars actually work? Well, it does manage to take all the best bits of the 3 cars that go to make it up, and none of the worst. It does have decent off-road ability without being as big as your house and thirstier than you'd ever want to pay for. It's certainly got practical estate car capabilities, but it doesn't look boring and bland. It looks great, in fact. And yes, it's certainly a sports car, but it's not as small and pokey as most ordinary sports cars. So, yes, it does work. Right, I've got to go and collect my new combined hat stand, toothbrush and roller skate, so I'll be off. Hey.
After the break, we take a tongue-in-cheek look at what we think an Audi niche buyer might be like. Plus, we'll be hearing more from David. Welcome back. Now, a while ago we took an Audi A6 4.2 Quattro Avant to North Wales and we fell in love with it. It's nutty as a fruitcake, it's got more power than Saddam Hussein, and it's got a fuel gauge that flickers every time you touch the accelerator pedal. David Ingram, explain yourself.
It's something that, again, we wanted to do. I mean, essentially Audi, we're a bunch of car enthusiasts, and we know what we like and what we would like to see. And it's never too far away from what some of our customers like to see. We have the A6. The A6 has been running very successfully, and we have the A8 with the V8, the 3.7 and the 4.2 litre engines. The V8 engine fits into the A6, so effectively why not?
Meet Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. They both live in a little village within commuting distance of the big city. Image is important to both of them. Mr. Smith works in the big town and drives an Audi A6 4.2 Quattro V8. His car is intended to reflect his desired status at work. Mr. Jones is a country estate agent. He loves to go hiking and fishing in his spare time. His 4-litre Discovery reflects his lifestyle and sets him apart from the serfs in the village. Now then, you two. What I'd like you to do is actually to swap cars, just for the day. And let's see if your personal choice of lifestyle car is really necessary for your lifestyle. Now come on. No more pulling face. That's it. Good. No, that's enough of that kind of thing. Now off you go and play. We'll see how you get on in a short while.
One of the first things that Mr. Jones would notice on climbing in here is that compared to the airy cabin of the Discovery, it's really rather gloomy in here thanks to the dark leathers and plastics used. But then he'd start to notice just the subtle quality of all the materials used, the chrome on the door handles, the very nice quality feel to the leather and the plastic. It is rather like sliding into a very well appointed, if very small, boardroom for what must be a very important and serious meeting. But the overriding impression, and probably the first thing to hit Mr. Jones, would be the fact that compared to the lofty perch of the Discovery from where you can see over hedges, you really do feel sat very close to the ground. Obviously, to drive, the A6 is a completely different prospect. No matter how good the engineering that's gone in to make the Discovery as close to a road car as possible, it's never going to be a match for the kind of low, wide stance of a car like this and the development work that's gone into that suspension. It really is a very different driving proposition. It uses its V8 very, very differently. applying the power, yes, through four wheels, but in a very different way. It's a much more sporty drive. It's much happier belting along either country roads or motorways, but particularly big motorways.
Well, having rid myself of the constraints of a jacket and tie, the first thing that Mr. Smith notices on stepping into the Discovery is that, of course, it's higher. It also feels a lot roomier, a lot airier, a lot lighter. The fabric and trim all round is more brighter than the sombre Audi. It's very comfortable. You can see this as a cruiser on the motorway doing 90 or so. It's almost an armchair on wheels put on cruise control, and it's great. And of course you have this high up driving position that you just don't get with the Audi. Performance wise, it's not bad. It can nip quite easily through this 5-speed gearbox.
Not surprisingly, our Mr. Jones enjoys a spot of hunting, shooting and fishing, and he'd be relieved to find that there's more than enough room in the boot of this A6 for all of his kit. There's even a little guard to keep the gun dog at bay. But here's a bit of a worry. The first time Mr. Jones returns with a muddy set of waders and an old wax jacket from a day's fishing, well, this boot is not going to look quite as pristine as it does now. It is, if anything, a little bit posh, and perhaps it's a bit too posh for Mr. Jones's purposes. And there's another worry. The Discovery will be able to romp its way perhaps a little closer to that lake with all of the fishing kit. But this, I reckon, is about as far as this car is going to get.
I do hope that Mr. Jones is looking after my Audi, not getting it too dirty. Now, as you can see, the Discovery is still a very big car. It's actually not quite as long as the A6 Avant, which is interesting, but it's wider, and it takes a fair bit of manoeuvring to get it in and out of tight car parking spaces like this. But once you get it in, well, have a look at the rear space. Smart. 2 individual child seats. They're smart as well. I just wonder whether perhaps this Discovery has the same sort of image that the Audi does, whether it's maybe a bit more down market, dare I say, than the Audi. Perhaps if you want a 4x4, the Range Rover would be the one to go for over the A6 Avant.
Whoa! I think one thing Mr. Jones would definitely enjoy is accelerating from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 7.1 seconds, which in a car this size is pretty impressive, even though it is nowhere near as big as the Discovery. But therein lies an important point. It is, what, 300 and odd brake horsepower from that V8. It's a very powerful car. And sure, it's nowhere near as big as the Land Rover, but it is still a big estate car. And there are some moments on country lanes when perhaps all that extra power and extra speed is more likely to get you into trouble than you would do in the Land Rover. You're going to be going faster than this on occasions, and there are moments when I certainly wouldn't like to meet a tractor coming the other way. Having said all of that, it is still a very enjoyable thing to drive, and I think Mr. Jones would rather enjoy that extra turn of speed and that ability to go just that little bit faster. After all, who doesn't enjoy a bit of extra speed? I really enjoyed the Audi, but I think Mr. Jones is going to miss a few things about his old Discovery. For a start, you're not going to be worried about getting the thing mucky, and there are definite advantages to that high-up driving position in this lofty, airy cabin. And then there's a proper off-road four-wheel drive system with a high and low ratio gearbox and with a clever descent gizmo to help you get down really steep hills. And there's no need to sacrifice any of life's little comforts either. Mr. Jones is quite accustomed to his electric seats, to his electric mirrors and his electric sunroof.
Now, as much as I like the Discovery, it's great to get back to the solid feel of the Audi, where quality is absolutely paramount. Superb quality finishes too, and plastics that are just excellent. You also get clever storage ideas, like these 2 bins in the doors. You get electric seats with lumbar support that adjusts to your back, plus Tiptronic gearbox that adapts to your driving style, and of course you can change gear manually should you wish to, plus climate control, with individual controls for both the driver and front seat passenger.
Well, it may not be quite as elegantly installed, but there are individual controls for front seat passenger and driver on the automatic air conditioning in the Discovery. And then for rear seat passengers, well, useful gizmos include an incredibly nifty mechanism for when there are only 2 passengers, getting rid of the rear centre headrest and providing a useful armrest, complete with rather vicious looking cup holders. Wouldn't want to get caught up in those. Then when you are on a long journey, there's plenty of places to accumulate all that gubbins that you take with you. For instance, we have pouches in the rear of the front seats and these useful overhead cargo nets.
Now, although you don't get the high-up seating position of the Discovery in the Audi, obviously, back here is a very civilised place. After all, who needs to look over hedges when you can relax back here with a centre armrest, absolutely perfect, which also has a centre storage area, 2 individual cup holders as well for rear seat passengers. It's just a civilised place to spend a few hours on a long journey, and there are some clever touches back here. And it's also back here that quality is absolutely paramount, along with some very clever touches. For instance, quality carpet that wouldn't look out of place in some people's living room. Heaven forbid putting a pair of muddy wellies on there or boots. Also chrome handles and chrome hooks for keeping luggage safe. A damped 12-volt adapter socket there. And it's not just the Discovery that can come with 7 seats, because the A6 Avant can have an optional set of rear-facing child seats, which makes a grand total of 7 people to carry.
Well, it may not quite so closely resemble the luxurious business departures lounge at a comfortable airport, but it is nevertheless pretty pleasant in here in a gentleman's club sort of way, and it is, after all, an off-roader. Now, there's accommodation back here for another 2 people, and it's extremely clever. When you don't need it, it stows away thus, with the headrest folding up into the roof and the rear seat folding sideways into the boot space itself. When they are in sight, then the rear seat passengers have luxurious little touches like their own individual cup holders and tray down by the side, and even control for each person over the CD player. And I call that rather clever thinking.